The coffee cup sat in the same spot every Friday morning. Black coffee, blueberry muffin, untouched for the first 10 minutes. Raymond Harris stared at the empty chair across from him like it held answers he'd never find. 3 years of this ritual. 3 years of pretending the silence didn't follow him home, didn't wrap around his 8-year-old son's questions he couldn't answer. But that morning, someone noticed. A woman in a tailored suit stopped beside his table, her eyes holding the same weight he carried. "Are you okay, sir?" 4 words that shattered the glass wall he'd built. 4 words that would unravel everything he thought he knew about grief, about being a father, about the space between surviving and actually living, because sometimes the loneliest people recognize each other, and sometimes that recognition changes everything. The corner table by the window had become Raymond's territory. Every Friday at 7:30, he'd walk through the brass-handled door of Brookside Café, order the same thing, settle into the worn leather chair facing the street. Morning light filtered through glass in soft amber waves, casting shadows across the empty chair opposite him. Outside, joggers passed in bright athletic wear, business people clutched briefcases, dog walkers paused at corners. The espresso machine hissed. Conversations murmured. Chair legs scraped against hardwood. Raymond picked up his cup, felt warmth seep into his palms, set it back down without drinking. The blueberry muffin sat untouched on its small white plate. He'd stare at it for exactly 10 minutes, then wrap it in a napkin and take it home. Caleb would eat it after school, crumbs falling onto the kitchen counter while doing homework in silence. The boy never asked why his father brought home a muffin every Friday. Just like he never asked why there were still 2 coffee mugs in the cabinet when only one ever got used. 3 years ago, this table had seated 2 people. 3 years ago, the blueberry muffin had been her order. 3 years ago, Friday mornings had meant laughter, weekend plans, her hand reaching across to steal a sip of his coffee. 3 years ago, Raymond had been someone who smiled without forcing it. Someone who knew how to be present instead of just existing in the same room as his own life. Now he came here because the absence felt like a presence. The empty chair wasn't just empty, it was hers. Coming here was both painful and necessary, like pressing on a bruise to remind yourself the injury was real. At home, in the routine of getting Caleb ready for school, packing lunches, checking homework, he could almost forget. Almost pretend the hollow feeling in his chest was just tiredness, just the normal weight of single parenthood. But it wasn't normal. Sitting here forced him to acknowledge what he spent the rest of the week avoiding. He was drowning. Not dramatically, not obviously, but slowly, steadily, like a man treading water so long he'd forgotten there was ever solid ground. Caleb needed more than what Raymond was giving. His son needed a father who was actually there, not just physically present but emotionally available. Not a ghost moving through rooms, checking off tasks, making sure the boy was fed, clothed, safe, but never asking the deeper questions. Raymond knew this. But knowing and changing were different countries, separated by an ocean he didn't have strength to cross. The cafe door chimed. Raymond didn't look up. His focus remained on the empty chair, on morning light catching dust particles in air, on his coffee probably gone lukewarm, but he'd drink it anyway because that was the ritual. Everything had to be exactly the same, every single Friday, or the whole thing fell apart. "Are you okay, sir?" The voice cut through his thoughts, gentle, but impossible to ignore. Raymond blinked, pulled his gaze away, looked up. A woman stood beside his table, one hand resting on the back of the chair he'd been staring at. Early 40s, charcoal gray suit that spoke of boardrooms and important meetings. Dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, a few strands escaping to frame her face. But it was her eyes that stopped him. Brown, deep, carrying a weight he recognized because he saw it in his own mirror every morning. "I'm fine," Raymond said automatically. "Thank you." She didn't move. Her hand remained on the chair. "I've seen you here before, every Friday. Same table, same order, same." She paused, glanced at the empty chair. Same conversation with someone who isn't here. Raymond's throat tightened. No one had ever said it out loud. I don't mean to intrude, she continued, voice softer. I know what that looks like. The staring at empty spaces. The ordering for two when you're alone. The trying to keep someone present by keeping everything exactly the same. She hesitated. I do it too. Raymond set his coffee down carefully. You come here? Every Friday. Different table. Same time. Green tea and a croissant. Sit by myself. Pretend I'm just taking a break from work. She smiled without reaching her eyes. I run a company downtown. Marketing firm. 600 employees. Back-to-back meetings, 8 to 6. You'd think I wouldn't have time to sit in a cafe for an hour every week. But you make time. I make time. Because if I don't, I'll forget. And I'm not ready to forget yet. She glanced at the empty chair again. May I? Raymond's first instinct was no. This table was his. This ritual was his. But something in her eyes made him nod. She sat slowly, setting her tea on the table, adjusting her suit jacket with precise movements. Catherine Webb. She extended her hand. Raymond Harris. He shook it, surprised by the firmness of her grip. They sat in silence, two strangers bound by a shared language of loss. Raymond studied Catherine's face, fine lines around her eyes from smiling through pain, the way she held her teacup with both hands like she needed the warmth, the small gold wedding band she still wore. How long? Raymond asked. Catherine didn't pretend to misunderstand. 4 years. Car accident. My husband and my daughter. She was 8 years old. Her voice remained steady, practiced in saying unbearable things without breaking. Ice on the highway, semi-truck couldn't stop. They said it was instant. Like that makes it better. Thanks for watching. Raymond felt his chest constrict. 8 years old. Caleb's age. I'm sorry. 3 years for you? Catherine nodded toward the empty chair. Cancer. 18 months from diagnosis to... He trailed off, picked up his coffee, set it back down. I have a son, Caleb. He was 5 when she died. You're raising him alone. I'm keeping him alive, Raymond corrected. Making sure he eats, goes to school, has clean clothes. But raising him? Actually being his father instead of just his caretaker? He shook his head. I come here and pretend I'm keeping her alive. The rest of the week, I pretend I'm keeping myself alive. And Caleb just exists somewhere in between. Catherine traced the rim of her teacup. I threw myself into work. 16-hour days, 7 days a week. Built the company from 30 employees to 600 in 4 years. Incorporated. Magazine called me one of the most successful female CEOs in the region. She laughed without humor. They don't know I go home to an empty house and eat dinner standing at the counter because sitting at the table feels wrong. They don't know I kept my daughter's room exactly the same. They don't know I'm not successful, I'm just busy enough to avoid thinking. Does it work? No. It just means you're exhausted when grief catches up at 2 in the morning. She met his eyes. And it means you miss everything happening in front of you while running from what happened behind you. Those words landed in Raymond's chest like stones. I don't know how to stop running. Neither do I, Catherine admitted. But maybe that's why I noticed you. Maybe people like us recognize each other because we're all running in the same direction backward. She paused. Your son, Caleb, what's he like? The question caught Raymond off guard. People asked how Caleb was doing, if he needed anything, but no one asked what he was like, as if grief had reduced the boy to a problem rather than a person. Raymond tried to remember the last time he'd really looked at his son. He's quiet, used to talk all the time about everything, but over the past year, maybe longer, he's just stopped. Comes home from school, does homework, eats dinner, goes to bed, doesn't ask for help, doesn't complain, doesn't laugh much. Raymond's voice dropped. He's 8 and acts like a middle-aged man who's given up. And I don't know how to reach him. I don't know if I even know how to reach anyone anymore. Catherine's expression shifted, something painful crossing her face. My daughter used to draw, all the time. She'd show them to me, so proud, and I'd glance for maybe 5 seconds before going back to my laptop. "That's nice, honey," I'd say, not really looking. She stopped, hands tightening around her cup. After the accident, I found hundreds of drawings. In almost every one, she drew our family. Her father, herself, and an empty space where I should have been. Or sometimes I'd be tiny, far away, like I was leaving. Raymond couldn't speak. I thought, providing for her, giving her a good life, I thought that was love. But she didn't need my money or my success. She needed me, and I wasn't there. Catherine looked up. "You still have time." The words hung like a challenge. Raymond thought about Caleb moving through their house like a ghost, about dinners in silence, about nights when he stood outside his son's door, hand raised to knock, never entering. "I don't know how," Raymond said. "I'm barely holding myself together." "Maybe you don't have to have all the answers. Maybe you just have to show up. Really show up." Catherine's voice was gentle. "Be present. Not just physically, but actually there." Raymond let out a breath. Show up. Such easy words for such a monumental shift. "Same time next week?" Catherine asked. Raymond nodded. "Yeah, I'd like that." The following Friday, Catherine sat across from him again. They talked about their weeks, her board meeting that ran too long, his burned dinners, the way small things triggered memories. Over the next month, Friday mornings became something Raymond looked forward to instead of dreaded. Catherine would ask about Caleb, which meant Raymond had to start actually paying attention. He noticed things he'd been missing. Caleb had started biting his nails, had moved his desk chair to face the wall, had stopped hanging drawings on the refrigerator, though he still drew them. One afternoon, Raymond found a stack in Caleb's backpack, dozens of drawings the boy never showed him. In each one, the same scene, a house with 2 windows lit up, one upstairs, one downstairs. 2 separate worlds under the same roof. Raymond brought the drawings to the café. Catherine studied them in silence, her expression growing troubled. "He's showing you exactly what he sees," she said. 2 people in the same house, living separate lives. She set them down carefully. "Raymond, when's the last time you did something with him?" "Not for him, with him." Raymond tried to remember. Couldn't. "I drive him to school, make his lunch, we eat dinner together." In silence. The accuracy stung. "Mostly." "When's the last time you asked about his day and actually listened? Played a game with him? Sat next to him while he did something he enjoyed?" Catherine's voice was firm but gentle. "When's the last time you were his father instead of just the adult who takes care of his physical needs?" Raymond had no answer. "I don't know how to be that person anymore." "You don't have to make everything okay," Catherine said. "You just have to show him he's not alone in feeling not okay." She paused. "What if you let me meet him?" Raymond looked up sharply. "What?" "I'd like to meet Caleb. If you're comfortable. I'm not trying to replace anyone, but I miss that, being around a child, and maybe I could help. Sometimes it's easier to talk to someone who isn't your parent." Raymond's first instinct was to refuse, but then he thought about those drawings. 2 lit windows, 2 separate worlds. "Saturday," Raymond said finally. "We usually just exist separately in the same house. Maybe you could come over." Catherine's face brightened. "I'd like that." That Saturday, Catherine arrived carrying a paper bag, wearing jeans and a sweater, the most casual he'd seen her. Caleb looked up from his book, wary but curious. "Caleb, this is Catherine," Raymond said. "She's a friend from the café." "Hi, Caleb." Catherine knelt to eye level. "Your dad says you like dinosaurs?" Caleb glanced at Raymond, surprised he knew that. "I used to. I'm kind of too old now." "Too old? I'm 43 and I still think dinosaurs are fascinating. They found a new species last year in Argentina, a titanosaur with the longest neck ever recorded." Caleb's eyes widened. "Really?" Catherine pulled out a book, thick, glossy, about recent dinosaur discoveries. "Thought you might like to see it. The pictures are incredible." Caleb took it carefully. "Thank you." Then, quieter. Do you want to see my drawings? I draw dinosaurs sometimes. I would love to. Raymond watched Caleb lead Catherine to his room, chattering more than he'd heard in months. He followed, stood in the doorway as Caleb pulled out sketchbooks, explaining each drawing with 8-year-old detail. Catherine listened to every word, asked questions, made comments showing genuine interest. Caleb responded, opening up in a way that made Raymond realize how closed off his son had become. After an hour, they made lunch together, grilled cheese and tomato soup. Catherine told stories about trying to dig up dinosaur bones in her backyard and finding old bottles. Caleb laughed. Actually laughed. Raymond couldn't remember the last time he'd heard it. When Catherine left, Caleb hugged her goodbye. Not polite, but real. I like her, Caleb said after she drove away. Can she come back? Would you want her to? Caleb nodded. She listens, like actually listens, not just while doing something else. Raymond crouched to his son's level. I'm sorry I haven't been listening, really listening. Caleb shrugged. It's okay. It's not okay. You deserve someone who's actually present, and I'm going to try to do better. Caleb looked at him for a long moment. I know you're sad about Mom. I'm sad too. But sometimes I feel like I lost both of you that day. The words landed like a physical blow. Raymond pulled his son into a hug, felt thin arms wrap around his neck, felt him shake with silent tears. They stood there, holding each other, crying together for the first time since the funeral. Catherine started coming over regularly after that. Saturday afternoons with books, art supplies, just herself. She'd sit with Caleb while he drew, help him build dinosaur habitats from cardboard, teach him paper airplanes that actually flew. She engaged with Caleb's world instead of trying to pull him into the adult world. But she also engaged with Raymond. She'd stay for dinner, and afterward, while Caleb did homework, they'd clean up together, talking about their days. She asked about his work, his hobbies, things he used to enjoy. Slowly, Raymond began to remember he was more than just Caleb's father, more than just a widower. He was a person with interests and opinions and the capacity for joy. 3 months after Catherine's first visit, Raymond enrolled Caleb in youth soccer. Not because his son needed activities, but because Caleb mentioned casually, barely audibly, that kids at school played and it looked fun. Raymond showed up to every practice, every game. Catherine came too, sitting beside him on bleachers, celebrating Caleb's rare goals and frequent falls with equal enthusiasm. One evening after practice, Caleb running ahead, Catherine said quietly, "You're doing it. Being present." "I'm trying. Some days are harder." "That's allowed. Grief doesn't disappear just because you're choosing to live again. It just coexists." She paused. "The days I spend with you and Caleb, I sleep better. The house doesn't feel as empty. I'm starting to remember what it feels like to be part of something." Raymond understood. The house that had felt like a mausoleum was beginning to feel like home, not because the pain was gone, but because life was happening inside it. But growth wasn't linear. A month later, Caleb came home with a permission slip for parent-teacher conferences. He handed it to Raymond without a word, then disappeared upstairs. Raymond looked at the form sections asking about family structure, emergency contacts. Simple questions requiring him to write, again, that it was just him, that his wife was deceased, that his son's emergency contact list had exactly 2 names. That night, after Caleb was asleep, Raymond called Catherine. "I don't know why this is hitting me so hard. It's just a form. But tonight it just made everything feel so final." "It's grief," Catherine said. "It comes in waves. You can be fine for weeks and then something small crashes it all back." She was quiet. "Do you want me to come over?" "It's 11 at night." "That wasn't my question." "Yeah, I think I do." Catherine arrived 20 minutes later in pajamas with a coat thrown over them. They sat on the couch, watched an old movie, shared microwave popcorn, existed in the same space without needing to fill it with words. When Catherine finally left around 1, Raymond realized she'd become more than just someone who understood his grief. She'd become someone he looked forward to seeing. Someone whose presence made difficult days bearable. The parent-teacher conference came Thursday afternoon. Mrs. Patterson started with standard updates. Caleb was doing well academically. No behavioral issues. Then her expression shifted, became more careful. I do want to mention something. There's been an incident with some students. Nothing physical, but they've been excluding Caleb at recess, making comments about him not having a mom. We've addressed it, but I wanted you aware in case Caleb mentions anything. Raymond's chest tightened. He hasn't said anything. That doesn't surprise me. Caleb keeps things inside. He spends most of recess alone, draws in his notebook instead of playing. She paused. I know he's been through tremendous loss. And I've noticed positive changes recently. He's smiling more, seems more engaged. But I think he might benefit from additional support. Have you considered counseling? Raymond had, multiple times. But he'd convinced himself Caleb was fine, that they were managing. Sitting here, hearing his son was being bullied, spent recess alone, kept it all hidden, Raymond realized he'd been lying to himself. I'll look into it. Thank you. He left and sat in his car for 10 minutes. Then he drove to Catherine's office. He'd never been there, never crossed that boundary, but he needed to talk to someone who would understand. The receptionist looked confused when he asked for Catherine Webb without an appointment, but she made a call. 2 minutes later, Catherine appeared. Concern immediate. Raymond? What's wrong? In her office corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows, he told her about the conference, the bullying, how Caleb had been dealing with this alone. I'm failing him. I thought I was doing better, but I'm still missing everything. Catherine sat beside him on the couch. You're not failing him. You're human. You can't see everything, fix everything. The fact that you're here, that you're upset, that you want to address it, that's being a good father. She took his hand, first time they'd had this kind of physical contact beyond brief goodbye hugs. And you're not alone. You have me. If you want me. The words hung in the air, carrying more weight than just the immediate situation. Raymond looked at Catherine, really looked, and saw someone who had become essential without him realizing when it happened. She wasn't replacing his wife. She was something entirely new, built from shared understanding and mutual support. I want you, Raymond said quietly. Caleb wants you. You've become part of our family without either of us meaning for it to happen. And I don't know what that looks like going forward, but I know I don't want to go back to how things were before. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. I don't want to go back either. The past 6 months, I've felt alive again. You and Caleb have given me something I thought I'd lost forever, a reason to come home. They sat as afternoon light faded, talking about what came next, about helping Caleb with bullying, about therapy for all of them, about what their relationship was becoming, about the future they were building, imperfect and complicated but real. That evening, Raymond sat with Caleb at the kitchen table, not to check homework, but to actually talk. He asked about school, recess, how Caleb was feeling. When his son started to deflect with, I'm fine, Raymond gently pushed back. It's okay to not be fine. I'm not fine a lot, but we can be not fine together instead of separately. Deal? Caleb looked at him, then nodded. Slowly, haltingly, he started to talk. About the boys who made comments, about feeling different, about missing his mom but also feeling guilty. He was starting to forget little things, her voice, her smell, how she used to tuck him in. I wish Miss Catherine was my mom, Caleb said suddenly, then looked stricken. I'm sorry. I didn't mean I know she's not. And Mom was... It's okay, Raymond interrupted gently. You can miss your mom and also wish for someone like Catherine. Those feelings don't cancel each other out. He paused. What if I told you Catherine might become a bigger part of our family? Not replacing your mom, no one could, but adding to our family, making it bigger. Caleb's eyes went wide. Really? Really? If that's something you'd want. Yes, I like when she's here. The house feels less sad. Raymond pulled his son into a hug. But things didn't stay smooth. 2 weeks later, Catherine's phone rang during dinner at Raymond's house. She glanced at the screen, apologized, stepped into the hallway. Her voice carried back tense, professional. "I understand the Singapore deal is critical, but I told you I'm unavailable this weekend." "Yes, I know what's at stake. Fine, I'll be there." She returned to the table, face tight. "I'm sorry. There's an emergency board meeting Saturday. International client threatening to pull out of a major contract. I have to go." "But Saturday is my soccer game," Caleb said, fork frozen halfway to his mouth. "You said you'd come." "I know, sweetie. I'm so sorry. I'll make it up to you. I promise." "You said you'd be there." Caleb's voice was flat, but his eyes were wet. He set down his fork, stood up. "Can I be excused?" Raymond nodded. Caleb disappeared upstairs. His door closed, not slammed, which somehow made it worse. Catherine sank into her chair. "I didn't think this is exactly what I used to do. Put work first. Tell my daughter later until there was no later left." "You didn't choose this meeting," Raymond said carefully. "Didn't I? I could have told them no, could have let my VP handle it. But I immediately said yes because that's what I do. That's who I've always been." Her hands shook. "I'm doing it again. I'm becoming that person again." Raymond reached across the table. "So don't be. It's a $20 million contract. It's one soccer game, to you." Raymond's voice was quiet but firm. "To Caleb, it's proof that you meant what you said, that he matters more than work, that you're different from the parent who was never there." Catherine closed her eyes. "My daughter's last school play. I missed it. Conference call with London that could have been rescheduled. She was a tree, had 2 lines. She'd practiced for weeks." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "She never asked me to come to another one." "You can't change that," Raymond said. "But you can change this." Catherine sat in silence for a long moment. Then she picked up her phone, dialed. "Mark? It's Catherine. About Saturday, I'm not coming. Handle it. I don't care if they're upset. I have something more important. My priorities have changed. If the board has a problem with that, we'll discuss it Monday." She hung up, hands still trembling. "I just potentially lost us a $20 million deal. You just showed an 8-year-old that he's worth more than $20 million. Catherine let out a shaky laugh. "I need to go talk to him." She went upstairs, knocked on Caleb's door. Raymond stayed in the kitchen but heard their voices, Catherine's apology, Caleb's quiet response, then silence. When Catherine came back down, her eyes were red. He asked if I was going to leave like his mom did. Not the same way, but just leave. Her voice broke. "He's so scared of being left again." "So are you," Raymond said. "That's why you bury yourself in work. If you're too busy to connect, you can't lose anyone else. And you bury yourself in routine. Same cafe, same chair, same ritual. If nothing changes, nothing can be taken away." Catherine sat beside him. "We're both terrified." "Yeah, we are." They sat in silence, 2 broken people trying to figure out how to be whole enough for a child who needed them both. The next morning, Catherine's phone rang. Her VP, voice clipped. The Singapore client had pulled out. The board wanted an emergency meeting Monday. Catherine listened, said she'd be there, hung up. "I cost the company $20 million, she said to Raymond over coffee. "The board is furious. Do you regret it?" Catherine thought for a moment. "No. For the first time in 4 years, no." She looked out the window where Caleb was kicking a soccer ball against the fence. "I regret every meeting I chose over my daughter. Every late night that meant missing bedtime. Every later, honey, that became never, honey. I'm not doing that again. Not to him. Not to you. Not to myself. But..." Saturday, Catherine showed up to the soccer game in jeans and a team t-shirt she'd ordered overnight. She cheered louder than anyone when Caleb scored his first goal of the season. Afterward, the boy ran to her first, and the hug they shared told Raymond everything he needed to know about the rightness of Catherine's choice. But Monday brought consequences. Catherine returned from her board meeting looking drawn. They're questioning my commitment, suggesting I take a sabbatical to sort out my priorities. They didn't say it, but the implication was clear: scale back on my personal life or scale back my role as CEO. What did you tell them? That my priorities are sorted, and if they can't accept that I'm not available 24/7 anymore, maybe I'm not the right CEO for them. She laughed without humor. 4 years building this company into what it is, and they're ready to push me out over one meeting. So let them. Catherine looked at him sharply. What? You hate it. You've said so yourself. You built this company as a distraction, not a passion. Maybe it's time to do something you actually care about instead of hiding behind success that doesn't make you happy. I can't just walk away from 600 employees. Why not? You have a strong VP, a capable team. They'll survive without you. Raymond took her hand. Will you survive without us? Catherine was quiet for a long time. No, I don't think I would. 2 months later, Catherine stepped down as CEO, staying on as a board advisor but cutting her hours to less than 20 per week. The business press called it shocking. Her colleagues called it career suicide. Catherine called it the first decision she'd made in years that felt right. She used the freed time to start a non-profit mentorship programs for single parents, grief counseling for children who'd lost parents, community support networks. She poured into it the intensity she'd once reserved for boardrooms, but this time with purpose that fed her soul instead of draining it. But even then, complications arose. 3 months after Catherine stepped down, Caleb came home from school and went straight to his room without greeting either of them. Raymond found him sitting on his bed, shoulders hunched. What's wrong? Nothing. Caleb. Dylan's mom asked if Catherine was my new mom. Caleb's voice was small. I didn't know what to say, because she's not. Mom is mom. But Catherine is. He trailed off, looking lost. I feel bad. Bad about what? About liking Catherine. About wanting her here. Like I'm being mean to Mom by wanting someone else. Tears spilled over. And then I feel bad for Catherine because she's really nice and it's not her fault. Mom died and she's trying really hard, but she's not Mom, and sometimes I wish she was, and then I feel even worse, and... Raymond sat beside him, pulled him close. Your mom would want you to be happy. She'd want you to have people in your life who care about you. Loving Catherine doesn't mean you love your mom less. The heart doesn't work like that. It just gets bigger. But what if I forget Mom? You won't. I promise. She's part of you. Nothing can change that. Raymond paused. And Catherine knows she's not your mom. She's not trying to be. She's just trying to be someone who's here for you, in whatever way you need. But what is she? If she's not my mom? Raymond didn't have an easy answer. I don't know. But does she need a label? Can't she just be Catherine? Someone who loves you and shows up and cares? Caleb thought about this. I guess. But the uncertainty lingered. At dinner that night, Caleb was quiet, polite but distant. Catherine noticed immediately. Later, after Caleb went to bed, she said to Raymond, He's pulling away. He's confused. About what you are to him. To us. I'm scared, Catherine admitted. Scared I'm pushing into a space I don't belong. Scared I'm making things harder for him instead of easier. Scared I'm going to lose this. She gestured between them. Lose you both. You're not going to lose us. How do you know? How do you know? Because we're choosing you. Every day. Even when it's confusing and messy and we don't have all the answers. We're still choosing this. Catherine's eyes filled. I'm choosing you too. Both of you. But what if that's not enough? Raymond didn't have an answer. Because he was scared, too scared, that the life they were building was too fragile, too complicated, too full of grief's sharp edges to survive. The next week, Raymond and Caleb started seeing a therapist, Dr. Martinez, a woman in her 60s with gentle eyes and no-nonsense approach. After 3 sessions, she asked if Catherine could join them. "Family dynamics, doctor," Martinez explained. "It's clear Catherine is part of this family system, even if the roles aren't traditionally defined. I think it would help everyone to process that together." Catherine came to the next session. They sat in Dr. Martinez's office, Raymond, Caleb, and Catherine on a couch, the therapist across from them in her chair. "Caleb," Dr. Martinez said gently, "can you tell Catherine what you told me last week? About feeling confused?" Caleb looked at his lap. Raymond gave his hand an encouraging squeeze. "I like you," Caleb said to Catherine, voice small. "A lot. And that makes me feel bad. Like I'm betraying Mom. And I don't know what you are. You're not my mom, but you're more than just Dad's friend. And it's confusing, and sometimes I just want things to be simple again, even though they weren't actually good when they were simple. They were just sad, and now I'm sad but in a different way, and I don't know what to do with it." Catherine's face crumpled. She slid off the couch, knelt in front of Caleb. "Can I tell you something? I feel the same way. I had a daughter, and I lost her, and nobody will ever replace her. But I care about you so much, and sometimes I feel guilty about that, like I'm betraying her memory by loving you. But then I think she'd want me to be happy. She'd want me to have people in my life who matter, and you matter to me. So much." She took Caleb's hands. "We don't have to figure out what to call this. We don't have to have labels. We just have to keep showing up for each other. Is that okay?" Caleb nodded, tears streaming. "Yeah, that's okay." Dr. Martinez's voice was soft. "Sometimes families aren't about biology or labels. They're about the people who show up, who stay, who choose each other again and again. That's what you 3 are doing, and it's okay for it to be complicated. It's okay to not have all the answers." They left that session lighter. Not fixed, not perfect, but understood. A month later, on a Friday morning, Raymond, Catherine, and Caleb went to the café together. They sat at Raymond's usual table, the one by the window where he'd spent 3 years staring at an empty chair. Catherine sat across from him now, real and present. Caleb sat between them, working on homework and stealing bites of everyone's food. Raymond ordered black coffee and a blueberry muffin. Catherine ordered green tea. Caleb got hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. "What are you working on?" Catherine asked Caleb, leaning over to look at his paper. "Family tree for school." He held it up. At the top, 2 branches, one for Raymond's family, one for his mother's. And then, off to the side, a separate branch. Catherine's name written carefully in Caleb's neat handwriting. "I didn't know where to put you," Caleb said, almost apologetically. "You're not on Dad's side or Mom's side, so I made you your own branch. Is that okay?" Catherine's hand went to her mouth. "That's more than okay. That's perfect." Mrs. Patterson said families are all different now, that there's not just one way to draw them. Caleb looked between them. "So I drew ours the way it actually is." Raymond felt something tight in his chest loosen. This was their family, unconventional, complicated, built from loss and grief and the stubborn refusal to give up on finding joy again. It didn't look like anyone else's family tree, but it was theirs. They stayed at the café for over an hour, the 3 of them talking and laughing and existing together in a way that felt both extraordinary and beautifully ordinary. When they finally left, walking down the sidewalk together, Caleb took both their hands, linking them. That night, after Caleb was asleep, Catherine and Raymond sat on the back porch. The air was cool, stars bright overhead. Catherine leaned against Raymond's shoulder. "I never thought I'd have this again," she said quietly. "A family, people to come home to. Neither did I." "Are you happy?" Catherine asked. "Really happy?" Raymond thought about it. About the complications, the therapy sessions, the hard conversations, the moments of doubt. About Caleb's confusion and Catherine's board meeting and his own lingering grief. But he also thought about Friday mornings at the café, about Saturday soccer games, about homework at the kitchen table and laughter over dinner. "Yeah," he said, "I'm happy. Not the same kind of happy as before, but good, real. Complicated, but real. Me too. Catherine was quiet for a moment. I got an email today. From Dylan's mom, the one who asked Caleb about me. What did she say? She apologized for putting him on the spot. And then she said watching us had given her hope. She's a widow too. 3 years. Said she thought she'd never have a family again, but seeing us made her think maybe it was possible. Catherine's voice caught. We're visible now, what we're building. And maybe that matters. Maybe someone out there needs to see that life after loss can still hold love. Raymond pulled her closer. Then, I'm glad we're visible. They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars, listening to the neighborhood settle into sleep. Inside the house, Caleb's nightlight glowed softly in his window. The family tree he'd drawn sat on the kitchen table, waiting to be turned in Monday. A new branch, reaching out to join the others. 6 months later, on a Friday morning at the café, Raymond pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. They were at their usual table, Caleb beside Catherine, all 3 of them sharing blueberry muffins, a new tradition to honor the old while embracing the new. Catherine, Raymond said. The tone made them both look up. These past months with you have been the happiest I've been in years. You've helped me remember how to be a father, how to be myself, how to believe life after loss is possible. You've given Caleb someone who sees him exactly as he is. You've given both of us a future. He opened the box. Simple gold ring. I know this isn't traditional. I know we're building something different here, but I want to make it official. I want us to be a family, in every way that matters. Will you marry me? Catherine's hand went to her mouth, eyes filling. She looked at Caleb, who was grinning, clearly in on the plan. Then, back at Raymond. Yes, she whispered. Yes, absolutely yes, Caleb whooped. Other cafe patrons looked over and smiled. The barista who'd watched Raymond sit alone for 3 years brought over hot chocolates on the house, her own eyes bright. But even in that moment of pure joy, Raymond felt the bittersweet edge. His wife would never meet Catherine, never know that her son would grow up with another woman's love. The loss didn't disappear just because new love appeared. They lived side by side, sorrow and joy, memory and future, what was and what could be. As they left the cafe that morning, walking hand in hand down the sidewalk, Raymond glanced back at the window. Just for a moment, he thought he saw a reflection, his wife, smiling. Not sad, not angry, but genuinely happy for him. He blinked. The reflection was gone. But the feeling remained. Permission. Release. A sense of being allowed to move forward without guilt. The wedding was small. Backyard ceremony at the house Raymond and Caleb once rattled around in like ghosts. Now it was filled with laughter, with friends, with Catherine's colleagues and parents from Caleb's school. The barista came, and Caleb's therapist, and Catherine's VP who'd held the company together when she stepped down. Caleb stood beside Raymond as best man, wearing a suit that made him look impossibly young. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Caleb spoke up. I object to waiting any longer. Can they kiss already? The crowd erupted. Catherine wiped away happy tears. Raymond grinned at his son. At the reception, Caleb gave a speech. My mom died when I was 5. For a long time, my dad and I were really sad. Our house was quiet and nobody smiled, and I felt like I was living with a ghost, not my dad. But then Catherine came. His voice was clear despite nerves. She didn't try to be my mom. She was just herself, and that was enough. She taught me you can be sad about what you lost, and also happy about what you have. She taught my dad how to laugh again. She taught both of us that family isn't just the people you're born with, it's also the people who choose to show up. He raised his sparkling cider. To Catherine, who showed up. And to my dad, who let her. Later, after guests left and Caleb was asleep, Raymond and Catherine sat on the back porch in wedding clothes, feet bare. Do you think she'd approve? Catherine asked quietly. Your wife. Raymond thought about the woman he'd loved, the mother Caleb had lost. She always said love wasn't finite, that you don't run out by giving it away, you create more. I didn't understand then, but I do now. I hope my husband and daughter feel the same, that they'd be happy I found you too. They would be, because they loved you. And when you love someone, you want them to be happy, even if you can't be the one making them happy anymore. They sat, watching stars appear. Inside, Caleb turned over in bed, settling into sleep. A dog barked down the street. Wind rustled through backyard trees. Life continued its gentle march forward, carrying them with it. "Thank you," Raymond said, "for not giving up on us." "Thank you for letting me in," Catherine replied, "for giving me a second chance at family. We saved each other. That's what family does." The following Friday, they went to the café as a family of 3. Catherine wore a wedding ring matching Raymond's. When the barista brought their order, she winked at Caleb and snuck him an extra cookie. Caleb pulled out his sketchbook, working on a drawing. Catherine asked questions, genuinely engaged. Raymond sipped his coffee, still black, still paired with a blueberry muffin. Some traditions worth keeping. "Dad," Caleb said without looking up, "can we come here every Friday? Forever?" Raymond exchanged a look with Catherine, saw his own contentment reflected. "Yeah, buddy. Every Friday." "Good," Caleb said, satisfied. "It's my favorite part of the week." "Hey, mine too," Catherine added. "Mine too," Raymond echoed. Outside, the city continued its Friday morning rhythm, but inside, at a table by the window where morning light turned everything golden, 3 people sat in unhurried contentment. They'd all known loss. They'd all survived grief that threatened to drown them. But they'd found each other in that darkness, and together, they'd learned to walk back toward light. The empty chair had been filled. The silent house had found its voice. The lonely single dad who'd spent 3 years staring at nothing had learned to see what was right in front of him. A second chance, a new family, a future built not on forgetting the past, but on honoring it while moving forward. And every Friday morning, at the same table, in the same café where it all began, they'd remember how far they'd come. Together,